What's going on, guys, and welcome back to Top 5 Scary Videos. There are a lot of horror movies out there. Some are great, some are good. There's a lot that are bad. I'm not gonna lie, some of them suck. Either it's a lazy retelling of a classic that worked in the past, or the idea started strong and then just got more and more ridiculous as time went on. I'm looking at you, Paranormal Activity. I see you with your 9th movie coming out in 3D. Get out of here. But where do these horror genres peak? That's the question, right? Which movie nails the theme so well that the others look bad? Well, here to break down 5 greats of those genres, I'm Taylor McWatters. Let's get counting. Number 5, Halloween. Written and directed by John Carpenter and released in 1978, we find the story of Michael Myers, one of the biggest horror icons ever, as he returns 15 years later after breaking out of a mental hospital for killing his sister on Halloween night. Now, this isn't the first slasher per se. At this time, we already had the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, we had Psycho, we had Black Christmas, but Halloween was able to take the best elements from those and then wrap it up into its own unique telling of the slasher genre. So let's talk about our protagonist, okay? First of all, Laurie, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, is a badass. So Carpenter wrote the screenplay, but producer Deborah Hill actually wrote the dialogue between our female leads, Laurie, Annie, and Linda. So off the bat, we have characters that are relatable and, more importantly, believable. Yeah, nobody is playing truth or drink on the dock with their tops off at midnight in this movie. They're written like 3 teens from high school would actually talk, for the most part. So we have legitimate sympathy for these characters. I mean, sure, there's still the classic nude scenes or whatever, but it's not overdone nearly as bad as some of the slashers today. Like, we get it, put your top on, it's fine. Laurie, of course, plays the final girl who screams and runs away at times, but she sticks to her guns in a truthful way. She makes sure that all the kids are protected and she fights back against Michael Myers. And as far as babysitters in horror movies go, she actually did quite well. Whereas other horror babysitters are literally the worst people on the planet to watch children.
Be right out.
But no, not Laurie Strode. The cinematography as well. I mean, this movie is done really well for such a small budget. The sounds of the wind blowing, the lighting, these are the elements that filmmakers learned from. This was the OG. John Carpenter did the music himself for this movie, so his vision, his actual vision of what he wanted this movie to be, was executed well because he knew what it should look and sound like while he was making it. It's very important. Now, we've seen many remakes of the classic and none have delivered the same feel as the original, but Jamie Lee Curtis is set to return again in 2 more Halloween sequels. So we'll see. Jamie Lee Curtis is awesome. She's the best. Still hard to beat this classic, but if anyone can do it, it's Laurie Strode herself. And before we go on to number 4, guys, if you could just go ahead and give us a like, because it helps us out a lot over here at the studio. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Now over to the best cam footage movie ever made. Number 4, The Blair Witch Project. Okay, the classic found footage genre that just won't die, no matter how many times we try. We've seen many different versions of this genre come to life, like the headache-inducing Cloverfield that puts viewers inside the camera while it's moving around during an action movie. Now again, this wasn't the first ever found footage horror movie. Cannibal Holocaust came out 20 years before The Blair Witch, but again, like Halloween, it elevated this type of storytelling. So 3 film students vanish after traveling into a Maryland forest to film a documentary on the local Blair Witch legend, leaving only their footage behind. Okay, that's the IMDb description of the movie, so it's aware that the ending is spoiled, which is odd for a horror movie to do that, but the main plot device here is anticipation. Although we know what's inevitably going to happen, because it's a found footage, it's part of the fun to see just how it happens, right? So the Blair Witch takes moments in between those horror genres and then stretches them. So usually if something crazy happens in a horror movie, it cuts to like a daytime scene. And then the audience together lets out a sigh of relief, and then they resume normal position. They just kind of like bring themselves back to normal. They're like, let's do it, we're good now. But in the Blair Witch, we see those minutes afterwards. We see the panic, and sometimes we see it a little bit too close.
And this is where we've ended up. And it's all because of me that we're here now. Hungry,
Directed by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, with only a budget of $60,000, they grossed over $140 million worldwide, which is insane. They also inspired so many fans to make their own movie. I mean, clearly it's possible to do with a nothing budget and a shitty camera. They act like we would too in the movie. I mean, they interview locals about the Blair Witch, they head into the woods to look for clues, and then after finding a pile of sticks with human teeth in it, they don't go home, which I feel like is something I would do. I feel like we would all do that. Teeth? We must be getting close. Yeah, so at this point they realize they're in a bit of a pickle and one of the students goes missing, so the remaining friends wander deeper in the woods and eventually find an abandoned house. Score. They end up hearing their friend's voice coming from in the house and they run and they find him. The camera drops, there's a bunch of screaming heard, and then that's the end of that student film. And I remember watching this long before Paranormal Activity, and I held my breath like the entire time. I didn't know if it was real or fake, and you can't really bottle that up again. As far as found footage movies go, this is still top dog. Number 3, Jaws. Oh, sorry, those were sharks in real life. I meant to show a clip from the 1975 Steven Spielberg classic Jaws. Ah, yes, that's more like it. Definitely what sharks are like in real life. All the sharks, all the time. This movie is the sole reason 90% of us are afraid of the ocean. Look, sharks are not this insane. I watched Shark Water and I expected it to be a horror film. It's not. Shark Water is not a horror film. It's beautiful. The late Rob Stewart did 2 amazing shark documentaries that you have to watch, especially if Jaws you up as a kid, which I feel like it did for all of us. So what makes Jaws the defining monster movie? Well, some argue that Jurassic Park would take that cake. Well, dinosaurs aren't real. And fear of sharks is now very real. So suspense is the key player in this movie again. So many fans have said that Alfred Hitchcock would be proud of this film, which is not an easy thing to get. So what worked with Jaws that doesn't work as well with other shark horrors like Deep Blue Sea or The Meg, for example, is that they don't put the entire movie on the shark. It's not about how big or bad the scary shark looks. No, Jaws is a human story that just revolves around a shark. You know what I mean? There's a difference. The main climax in this movie is when we have a boat with the cop, the scientist, and the hunter. That's where the main story comes from, at heart. Some movies will come close to capturing that anticipation, like The Shallows with Blake Lively took a new concept of being stuck all alone with one single shark. Or Open Water was 2 divers stranded in water, not necessarily a shark horror, but sharks were most certainly in the picture. I mean, this movie did so well, there was a ride at Universal Studios where you could relive the horror yourself. Yeah, you wait in line to get attacked by a shark. It was great. It was up and running from the 90s until it closed in 2012 to make room for some Harry Potter extension. So, hell yeah, 10 points to Gryffindor. See ya, Bruce. Number 2, The Cabin in the Woods. Satire is an extremely hard genre to nail, okay? The first big satire I would say is Scream, but we already talked about slashers earlier with Halloween, so I'm gonna go with this one. Released in 2011, written by Drew Goddard and Joss Whedon, we have 5 friends who head to a cabin in the woods. Now, thanks to so many movies from our childhood, we already have an idea of where this is going, which is perfect. That's exactly what they want you to think. I think this movie came out at the perfect time. It was a year before the Avengers movies started to be the main focus of cinema, and as far as satire goes, I think this is the best we're gonna get. So we're introduced to our main characters and they're the usual bunch. We have the stoner, the jock, the party girl who likes to make out with random animal heads, the nerd, and of course, the virgin. All taking place in one secluded cabin. Oh, and this cabin? Well, it's exactly what you'd expect for a group of enthusiastic college students in a horror film. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's no cell reception, there's terrible lighting, and you can't forget the basement full of creepy artifacts. Awesome, perfect weekend getaway. But behind the scenes, we have scientists who are making bets on which haunted artifact they're gonna f with first, awakening whatever evil creature comes with it. So this is a wild world where victims are so common, and after growing up with more than enough Friday the 13th movies, we know exactly who these people are. And quite frankly, we're getting quite annoyed of them. So luckily, this is also a monster movie that takes place in a world where the ancient ones are real, and more importantly, they require a sacrifice. So they have this cabin as a secluded little area to purposely kill the group to save the world. So it plays on the dumb stereotypes and you're almost rooting for them to all die. I mean, in a crazy way. I mean, it saves humanity, so whose side are you on really here? Come on. We see everything we want in this movie. We see this hilarious scientist working behind the scenes so that all these character tropes are met in a funny, orderly fashion. And this movie also knows what it is, and it calls the shots right in your face, even telling you what's gonna happen. It's a perfect satire. Co-writer and producer Joss Whedon even said that he wanted audience members to believe they had sat down to the wrong movie. So right off the bat, they're trying new ways to captivate the audience, which is sick. So the title of the movie, when it pops up, that in that of itself is a jump scare that comes out of nowhere, and it scares the shit out of you. Check it out.
Are you even listening to me?
So the film knows we're watching a horror movie and it plays with our emotions in a fun way. Yet it stands by itself as a great horror film. It's perfect, you're right in the middle, right where you want to be. So these hilarious one-off moments that I've always wanted to see in a horror movie, like for example, the old man who's local, he always warns the teens not to go further. That scene is in so many movies, and here they make an incredible bit with that, where he's upset because he's left on speakerphone. There it is at 58 seconds to 1:08.
Cleanse the world of their ignorance and sin. Bathe them in the crimson of... Am I on speakerphone?
No, absolutely not.
And finally, number 1, The Exorcist.
Of our Lord Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with the Father and the Holy Spirit. Damien!
Released in 1973, written by William Blatty and directed by William Friedkin, comes probably the most popular possession horror film to date. So when an actress in Washington notices some odd changes in her 12-year-old daughter, both mental and physical, she asks for the help of a priest to set things right. So William Friedkin had made documentaries up until this point, and it was important for Blatty to get someone who wasn't involved in horror in order to not get caught in the common tropes and keep it more realistic, right? And the casting of non-major actors helped deliver this story as well. And it's definitely terrifying. I mean, the effects look really good for a movie that came out almost 50 years ago. Are you kidding? All the effects were done right there during filming on set. They didn't just shoot a green screen and then work on it for a year. No. No, they had to make this look real for the camera the day of, and that's why it's timeless. Kind of like The Grinch, a lot of costume and prop work, and it doesn't really get old. So some of the horror elements in this are just amazing. I mean, Friedkin used these fast, quick cuts of demonic faces so that you unconsciously get scared. Is that not the most insane shit you've ever heard? And on top of zero comedy in the movie, it has the classic Exorcist music to send chills down your spine every time you hear it. Also, this movie was so scary, priests had to go to the film and f***ing chant the entire time to keep audiences safe. Yeah, and you thought Marvel nerds were bad? Okay. Well guys, there you have it. Which other horror films do you think define a certain genre? I know there's tons to look at and break down, so I'll try to get to them all in a part 2. But until then, thanks for watching, stay safe, keep watching horror movies, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.